Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a blended dark lager that is by Elder Pine Brewing and Blending, based in Gaithersburg, Maryland. We've done a few of their beers, all very nice, but it's been a while. Late alert on this one. This is called Through Woven Branches. It's black and white, and indeed there are woven branches there. And they have this kind of gold foil that they do on all of the labels that I've seen that they do. Very nice, very clean design. This specific beer clocks in at 6.5% ABV, and it is a blend of 3 different beer styles, all of which have been whiskey barrel aged. And they tell us right on the back. So it is 72% of its makeup is a black lager that was aged in whiskey barrels for up to 28 months. 18% of the blend is a Baltic porter aged in whiskey barrels for up to 28 months. And then the final 10% is an amber lager that was also whiskey barrel aged in barrels up to 28 months. So a nice blend of beers. Very, very interesting. You don't get a lot of dark lagers, and that they have a blended whiskey barrel aged version. I mean, I had a suspicion this is going to be a special beer. So yeah, I'm really much looking forward to it. Now, I did choose my Pilsner glass today, which should be a good fit, as this is dominated by a blend of lagers and it's dark. But this barrel aging, I think, is going to be kind of the wild card. I expect it to work well, so let's get this cracked. And my Pilsner glass will not hold a pint in full, which this is, so we'll get as much as we can. Get it started. Try to be reasonably smooth here. And then a little speed, give it a chance to form a head. We'll slow this down. Yeah, not quite. It probably could get the whole can, but we need to leave some room for that head anyway. So visually, yeah, this is not pitch black. It's very, very dark, though it is nearly pitch black. It's worth mentioning. I can only see just at the very, very bottom of this glass a decent bit of light coming through. And if you're really holding this up right in front of the LED light, you can see some light through the other side. But without a super bright light source, I doubt anybody would be able to see through it. That is something that maybe I wouldn't expect, or the average person would, with only a 6.5% ABV. But this is a blend of 3 different dark beers. So yeah, whatever malts they had in there also are going to draw out a lot of color and hue into the beer. So yeah, very, very nice looking beer. It did form a nice thick creamy head. Let's get right up over this for a sniff. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it definitely smells like a blend of different beers. There's no question about it. The amber beer, which only makes up 10% of this, has a very distinct, much more caramelly kind of aroma coming out of the malt bill to that one. So that one's actually pretty easy to pick out. And then the black lager and the Baltic porter, 72 and 18% respectively, they kind of blend together. And they use some similar malts there to one another. So it's going to be those darker, roastier tones. And that comes out as well. There's also a very distinct kind of cereal grain-like quality on this one on the nose, but it smells really, really nice. Different ratios that they use of this different blend of beers, but it smells quite nice. Now, one thing that I find a little interesting is there is only a slight aroma of whiskey barrel at all on this. The dominant aromas coming off of this beer are all indeed coming straight from the malt bills of the blend of beers themselves. So I didn't expect that. But what I did smell smells absolutely fantastic. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in, see what this one's about. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. This is a really complex, very impressive beer. I mean, the aroma was great, but at first sip, I am just absolutely a fan of this. Wow. This is impressive, and it's big. It's a blend of 3 different beers, all of which were whiskey barrel aged. Now, I can tell you, even though I couldn't really pick up the whiskey at all on the aroma, just subtlety, It actually is quite nice and comes through very clearly on the flavor profile, but it is not dominating this beer flavor. So much like the aroma, it's an additive, but it's really the story about this blend of these beers and their interplay with one another. And when I say that, I mean the actual underlying malt bills, in particular of the beers that were used in the blend. So it is very malt dominant, and this is extremely roasty. And I have to say, there is a really nice kick of very earthy and roasty bitters with tons of chocolate notes coming out of this as well. You don't often get that in a lager, and indeed, if you say looked at German Schwarzbier, black beer, which is a dark black lager, of course, this has a lot more character and a lot more intensity in all facets than that is, and I really love those beers. But this is big. The blending of these really makes for a unique beer drinking experience, and it's very, very nice. It's much more complex than I imagined, but it is very much driven by the blend of the beers and the malts themselves. And then this whiskey barrel is just this added bonus. It's there, it's clear, but it's not a dominant flavor on the profile. It's just the added cherry on top in the background. So this beer, to me, this blend that went into making it, is really the story of what this beer is about, and it is excellent. So there's a lot happening here. I had a lot of complexity and layering to pick apart. I'm going to jump back in for another sip. I'll get this body, this mouthfeel. We'll talk more specifics about kind of how these flavors open up. Then we'll talk about the balance and the finish. But absolutely fantastic beer right here. Take two. Body on this is a solid, full, medium body. Almost bordering on medium heavy. It's got way more presence to it than you would expect, both for a lager and for a beer at only 6.5% ABV. In terms of the mouthfeel on this one, it's quite nice. It's got not a ton of resistance. The resistance isn't quite as robust as the body is weighty, but it's there. You can feel it. This one does get quite silky, quite creamy when you agitate it around the palate. It feels very, very nice. So in terms of where the flavor profile starts and where it opens up kind of in the rye to flavor progression, it really does start very much with this roastiness, this earthiness of bitters, and tons of chocolate and bordering on char coming out of the various malt bills. It's quite intense. This is a really, really impressively intense roasty back to the malt bills in this blend of beers that make this one. And I never would have guessed it would be that intense. It's very rare to get that level of intensity in a lager, especially at only 6.5% ABV, but it's very much there. Other layers of nuance. There was some caramel note coming out, presumably from that amber lager part of the blend on the aroma. I'm not really getting that in the flavor profile in this, but I am getting almost akin to a nut brown ale. There was a very distinct nuttiness. It kind of reminds me of kind of toasted or roasted hazelnut is really kind of what's popping, and that's pairing with this underpinning of that earthy, roasty, almost char-like, and that earthy bitters, and this underpinning of chocolate. And really, it's more cacao than anything else, or dark, very dark chocolate with minimal sugar, and that is dominated by cacao. And it's really big, it's really roasty. This is a big, rich, roasty beer. And then you just have this haunting whiskey kind of barrel flavor that floats on the back of the palate. It's distinctly whiskey, and you get more whiskey than anything else other than subtleties of barrel notes. But it just pairs so well in this beer. This is very, very big. I didn't expect it to be this big and this layered, but it just is. And that kind of ties us into the final categories I wanted to point about: the balance and the finish. The balance on this, I think, is excellent. I thought that maybe 72% of this blend being that dark black lager blend would kind of override the subtlety of the Baltic Porter edition and the amber lager, but it really doesn't. The amber, maybe not so much in the flavor sense, but certainly on the aroma. And the Baltic Porter, I think a lot of this underlying roast and char is also coming out of the malt bill from that. Obviously, a black lager could share a lot of those same malts and in equivalent ratios, but it's very nice. It's very roasty. That is the bulk of it. But whether or not the balance is equal, a third, what they did with this, the balance of this, and picking the beers that were whiskey barrel aged that had such layers of complexity and subtlety to them, then bringing them all together, masterfully done. I wouldn't change a thing about the balance on this beer whatsoever. And then for the finish, this is much longer than your average lager, to be certain. And on this one, though it was barrel aged, it's not barrel aging driving out the length of the finish. It's the depth of the roast and char with lingering earthy bitters and underpinnings of just cacao. It's quite prevalent, and it is long after each sip. This is like stratospherically top tier in terms of length of mileage on each sip that you get from any lager. And again, it's only 6.5% ABV. This is a truly delicious, multi-layered, complex, and really big beer that absolutely blew me away. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, come up with my scores. When we come back, we'll get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Elder Pine Brewing and Blending's Through Woven Branches. 6.5% ABV on this one. It was a blended dark lager that was a blend of 3 different whiskey barrel aged beers, a black lager, a Baltic Porter, and an amber lager. Elder Pine Brewing and Blending is based in Gaithersburg, Maryland. So, wow. This was one of the best lagers I've had in recent memory by a landslide. Absolutely packed with aroma and flavor and just masterfully executed, masterfully balanced. There was so much to like about this beer, and the scores really do reflect how well they did with this one. So we're going to go through the scores now. There were only 2 categories that did not sweep it with a perfect score, so we're just going to touch on those. The first one was the aroma. I absolutely loved what I got out of the aroma, and it was indeed far more pronounced than your average, particularly lager, and especially in this ABV range. And it was very much dominated by the underlying malt bills of the blend of the beers. And I was actually really impressed that you could pick out the subtleties between the blends. Even though the ratios were different, it was 72, 18, and 10 in the various ratios of the 3 beers, but they all had very much their own unique voice in the aroma profile. Really, the only thing that held it back for me was I would have liked a little more than just a whisper of the whiskey barrel side of the equation to have popped through the aroma as well. But a minor nitpick, I only docked 1 point here. The aroma does get a 9 out of 10. The second category, it did not get a perfect score, was in the mouthfeel. And the mouthfeel was very, very nice. It was extremely lush, extremely silky, just absolutely smooth. But compared to the full medium, almost bordering on medium heavy body, and yes, it is a lager, but even with lagers, when you get that much substance from the body, in general, you're going to have at least some modicum of a noticeable increase in resistance on the mouthfeel side of the equation as well, compared to just a standard low ABV beer or, say, the equivalent resistance of water. This one was above average, but it wasn't quite as resistant as I expected. It didn't quite match the fullness of the body. Again, this is really a minor nitpick, and it was above average. The mouthfeel gets a 7 out of 10, and it did get a perfect 10 out of 10 in the remaining 8 categories. That is taste, body, finish, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling/intangible, and example of style, which brings the total score on Elder Pine Brewing and Blending's Through Woven Branches to a 96 out of 100. Guys, this beer came extremely close to getting top marks in everything. Just a few minor things that really aren't even a dig at anything that the brewer did or at the beer itself. Would that I could have given this a perfect score across the board. I absolutely think this is top tier. I don't remember the last time that I had a lager I enjoyed this well. And the presence of this beer was absolutely insane. This really had a lot of facets that would give double the ABV ales a run for their money, and that is saying something. This is a big beer. If you don't normally, or you've never had a dark lager, but you go for stouts, you go for porters, you go for bigger high ABV, darker beers, do yourself a favor, consider something like this. And I would say under that umbrella, if you can find this, this is well worth the effort. Be you a dark ale or lager fan, this is one of those that you're not going to forget it anytime soon. This is a world-class beer right here, and I am absolutely thrilled that I was able to grab this one from Tavour. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.